The car sat idling in the dark, its headlights cutting through the empty stretch of road like a silent alarm no one had yet answered. The driver's door hung open. A purse remained inside. Scattered nearby were unmistakable signs of violence, items that told a story far more chilling than a simple roadside breakdown. Within hours, what began as a missing persons case would unravel into a brutal murder investigation that exposed not just a killer, but a system that had failed, repeatedly, predictably, and with devastating consequences. Before we go deeper, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss stories that matter. Amy Willard's disappearance on that summer night in 1996 initially followed a familiar and hopeful pattern. A young woman leaves a bar after spending time with friends, expecting to make a routine drive home. There was nothing outwardly unusual about her evening. She had a stable background, strong family support, and a promising future shaped by academic achievement and athletic excellence. Cases like hers often begin with urgency but also with optimism, the belief that the individual may simply be delayed or unreachable. But the discovery of her vehicle quickly shattered that hope. Her car wasn't just abandoned, it was staged in a way that suggested something had gone terribly wrong. The engine was still running, lights on, door open. Nearby, there was blood. Personal items lay scattered, not carefully placed but violently displaced. Investigators immediately recognized that this was not a voluntary disappearance. The location, a highway off-ramp, raised further questions. Why would someone stop there in the middle of the night? Why leave the car in that condition? And perhaps most importantly, who had been there with her? Crime scene analysis pointed toward a forced encounter. The presence of a tire iron and visible damage to the rear of the vehicle suggested a staged collision, a tactic sometimes used by predators to lure unsuspecting drivers into stopping. This method, while not common, had been documented in previous criminal cases. It relies on a simple psychological trigger, the instinct to assess damage after a minor accident. For many victims, that moment of stepping out of the car becomes the point of vulnerability. Within hours, the investigation escalated dramatically. The discovery of Amy Willard's body transformed the case from a search into a homicide. Found miles away from her vehicle, her body bore the unmistakable signs of extreme violence. She had been sexually assaulted and beaten to death with what investigators believed was a blunt object, likely the same tire iron found near her car. The brutality of the crime shocked even seasoned law enforcement officers. It was not a spontaneous act of violence. It showed signs of control, premeditation, and escalation. Cases like this often trigger widespread public fear, particularly when the victim appears to have been targeted randomly. The idea that someone could be followed, manipulated into stopping, and then abducted raises immediate concerns about broader public safety. Law enforcement agencies began examining similar incidents in the region, looking for patterns that might indicate a serial offender or a repeat method. The focus quickly shifted from who would harm Amy Willard to who else might be at risk. For nearly a year, the case remained unsolved. Investigators pursued leads, interviewed suspects, and analyzed forensic evidence, but nothing resulted in an arrest. DNA testing, still evolving in the 1990s, played a critical role in eliminating early suspects. This process, while frustrating for families awaiting justice, is essential in ensuring accuracy. The absence of immediate answers often reflects the complexity of building a case that can withstand legal scrutiny. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A seemingly unrelated incident, a man attempting to break into an apartment, led police to Arthur Bomer. What initially appeared to be a routine arrest soon revealed a far more disturbing reality. Bomer's behavior, possessions, and vehicle raised immediate red flags. He was found with keys linked to a car that did not match its license plates, suggesting possible involvement in other criminal activity. As investigators dug deeper, connections began to emerge. Boehmer's movements, his proximity to the crime scene, and his familiarity with the area all aligned with the circumstances of Amy Willard's disappearance. But it was forensic evidence that ultimately provided the strongest link. DNA recovered from the victim matched Boehmer, placing him directly at the scene of the crime in a way that could not be explained away. Testimony further strengthened the case. Individuals close to Boehmer reported statements and behaviors that suggested guilt. While such testimony must always be evaluated carefully, it often plays a crucial role in establishing patterns and corroborating physical evidence. In this case, it helped build a narrative of premeditated violence. One of the most disturbing aspects of the investigation was the method Boehmer allegedly used to approach his victims. Reports indicated that he employed deception, posing as a figure of authority using a fake police badge. This tactic exploits a fundamental societal trust in law enforcement, making it particularly dangerous. Victims are more likely to comply with instructions, believing they are dealing with the legitimate officer. Combined with staged car collisions, this approach created a highly effective and deeply predatory strategy. As the case unfolded, it became clear that Amy Willard was not Boehmer's only suspected victim. Evidence linked him to the disappearance of another woman, Maria Cabano. Her case shared striking similarities: a damaged vehicle, signs of struggle, and eventual discovery of remains indicating violent death. While Boehmer was never formally charged in connection with Cabano's murder, investigators considered him the prime suspect. The parallels between the cases suggested a pattern rather than an isolated incident. What made this revelation particularly troubling was Boehmer's criminal history. He was not an unknown figure slipping through the cracks unnoticed. He had prior convictions, including violent offenses, and had repeatedly violated the terms of his parole. Each violation represented an opportunity for intervention, a moment when the system could have acted decisively to prevent further harm. Instead, those opportunities were missed. The concept of parole is rooted in rehabilitation and reintegration. It assumes that individuals who have served part of their sentence can safely return to society under supervision. However, this system relies heavily on monitoring, enforcement, and risk assessment. When these components fail, the consequences can be severe. Boehmer's case became a stark example of what happens when warning signs are ignored or underestimated. Public reaction to the case was intense. Many questioned how someone with Boehmer's record had remained free despite repeated violations. Authorities acknowledged shortcomings, describing the situation as a failure of oversight. These admissions, while important, did little to ease the sense of preventable tragedy. Ultimately, Boehmer was convicted and sentenced to death. The trial presented a comprehensive body of evidence, including DNA, witness testimony, and behavioral patterns. The verdict brought a measure of closure to Amy Willard's family, but it also left lingering questions about systemic accountability. How many warning signs must be missed before a tragedy becomes inevitable? This question becomes even more pressing when examining other cases with similar trajectories. Randy Gay's story, for instance, reflects a pattern of repeated violence over decades. His early life was marked by instability and exposure to violence, factors often cited in discussions about criminal behavior. However, while background can provide context, it does not excuse repeated acts of lethal violence. Gay's first conviction came at a young age, following a fatal shooting during a personal dispute. He served time but was released relatively quickly. This pattern would repeat itself. After subsequent violent incidents, including the murder of his own father, he was again incarcerated and later released. Each release was based on assessments that he could reintegrate safely, a conclusion that would prove tragically incorrect. His final crime was particularly shocking in its brazenness. In front of witnesses, Gay shot a woman at close range, demonstrating a level of confidence or detachment that suggested a long history of unchecked behavior. The presence of witnesses did not deter him, indicating either a belief that he would avoid consequences or a complete disregard for them. At trial, the argument for leniency centered on his troubled past and struggles with substance abuse. These factors are often considered in sentencing, reflecting a broader understanding of the complexities of human behavior. However, the prosecution emphasized a different reality, a consistent pattern of violence that escalated each time he was given another chance. The jury ultimately agreed, sentencing him to death. Joseph Atkins' case adds another dimension to this broader narrative. A Vietnam veteran, Atkins returned from war with experiences that would later be cited as contributing factors in his behavior. Post-traumatic stress disorder, though not as widely understood at the time, has been linked to difficulties in emotional regulation and impulse control. However, as with other cases, context does not negate accountability. After serving time for an earlier killing, Atkins was granted parole, a decision influenced in part by family support and assurances of rehabilitation. Yet, within years, he committed another series of violent acts, including the murder of his own father and a young girl. The severity and randomness of these crimes underscored the unpredictability of individuals who have demonstrated a capacity for extreme violence. His eventual execution marked the end of a long legal process involving appeals and clemency requests. Arguments for mercy cited his military service and psychological trauma, while arguments against emphasized the nature of his crimes and the risks he posed. The final decision reflected a judgment that the latter outweighed the former. Taken together, these cases reveal a troubling pattern. Each involves individuals with documented histories of violence who were released under systems designed to monitor and manage risk. In each instance, there were warning signs, clear indicators that the individuals posed ongoing threats. And in each case, those warnings were either missed, minimized, or insufficiently acted upon. The role of forensic evidence in securing convictions cannot be overstated. Advances in DNA analysis have transformed criminal investigations, providing a level of certainty that was previously unattainable. In the cases discussed, forensic evidence played a crucial role in linking perpetrators to their crimes, ensuring that justice was based on verifiable facts rather than speculation. However, while forensic science is essential in solving crimes, it is inherently reactive. It comes into play after a crime has been committed. The more pressing challenge lies in prevention, identifying risks before they result in harm. This requires robust systems of supervision, clear accountability, and a willingness to act decisively when warning signs appear. Patterns of escalating violence are often visible in retrospect. Minor offenses lead to more serious ones, each incident testing the boundaries of what the system will tolerate. When early interventions fail, the trajectory can lead to irreversible outcomes. Recognizing these patterns in real time is one of the greatest challenges facing law enforcement and judicial systems. The failures highlighted in these cases are not unique to any one region or era. They reflect broader systemic issues that continue to be debated and addressed. Balancing rehabilitation with public safety is a complex task, requiring nuanced decision-making and continuous evaluation. Yet, as these stories demonstrate, the cost of getting that balance wrong can be devastating. In the end, the tragedies of Amy Willard, Maria Cabano, and others are not just stories of individual crimes. They are cautionary tales about systems under strain, about decisions made with incomplete information, and about the human consequences of those decisions. They remind us that justice is not only about responding to crime but also about preventing it. If these stories resonate with you and you want more deep, investigative breakdowns like this, make sure to subscribe.